Hello everyone, and welcome back to Nailing Your Thesis. We will continue our discussion of the various parts of performing scientific research, still in an overview. We looked at the overall process and what makes up a good research question. Now in this segment we will look at so-called relevant work, comprising prior art and related work. You may already know the related work part because we discuss it as an important part of a research paper, where in the related work part you discuss all the other work that researchers have done that relates to your own as possibly competing work, or work that provides related ancillary insights into your research question. Here, relevant work is a slightly larger term that I use to describe the combination of prior art, prior work, and related work. Relevant work is all the research work you need to know in order to perform good research. And again, it splits up into prior art, prior work, and related work. Prior art, prior work is relevant research work that you build on. It's what you learn during class and school, or as you engage and in a research domain, engage with research questions and deepen your understanding of that research domain. It's all the things you take for granted, where you don't make any assumptions different from what that prior art, prior work tells you is the established body of knowledge that you should be and probably are familiar with then eventually when you get to your own research work. It goes back to Newton, one of the greats, who at his time probably rather than diminishing his own importance, well, he probably perhaps didn't quite know about it yet, who said, I have seen further, or if I have seen further, so he probably did recognize his impact, if I have seen further than others, it was, or it is, by standing on the shoulders of giants. So science builds on each other. We are not starting to climb the mountain from the very basic sea level, but we are always climbing on top of what came before. Or well, climbing to the top of the mountain simply means catching up where research is, and then as you build on that top of the mountain, you can see a bit further. There's also another good reason to look beyond what is already there by climbing on top of it, because you don't only want to see far, you also simply don't want to embarrass yourself towards your peers, because you may not know what you're talking about. So then, building on prior art, you do it simply to be effective. No point in repeating well-established work, because unless you find some flaws with it, or until you find some flaws with it, there might be a long time. No, you really should be building on prior art, and you do it to get faster to your stuff, what you want to do. You learn from others, and you also certainly want to build or know first and then build on prior art, to not repeat other people's mistakes and simply not to embarrass yourself. Next to prior art, there is related work. That has a special place in science and certainly in scientific writing, because related work literally, so it's conceptually, all that research work that you that you're competing with, that you need to compare and contrast your own work with, to show that you actually achieved some scientific progress. So that related work may be similar in many respects, but if it's identical, you have a problem typically. So as you look at research work that you classify as related work, you always take a compare and contrast approach, where you first compare what did the other guys do, what am I doing, what are we doing, and then what is the difference and how is ours different, maybe superior on some or many aspects. And then related work is also the name of that particular section in a research thesis or a research paper that you might be writing. In a research paper, in computer science at least, typically the section following the introduction. Literally, it's the title of that section, so you better understand that pattern and use it. Question now is, how do you learn about prior art and related work? Prior art, again, that's what we teach you here. We teach you in the methods part of this course. We teach, or you will learn as you engage more deeply in a particular research domain. Related work is what you dig up as you try to answer your own research question when trying to learn what other people have already done with respect to answering that or a similar research question. Going shortly back to related work, it also has a social purpose, which is to acknowledge other people's work. You're not working in a vacuum. You do show, you do know, and you do acknowledge that other people are there and they have done good work. And thereby you demonstrate you actually reached the frontier, the boundaries of known established scientific knowledge, and you're ready to go beyond it. Boldly go beyond it. So then again, prior art and related work constitute what I call relevant work here. Now back to how do you actually learn about it? How do you go about establishing, acquiring that knowledge that makes you fit, makes you understand prior art and related work and brings you to that boundary of knowledge? Well, it's typically done as part of the literature search and review, the literature work that you do as you engage on some research work. Think back to our short overview discussion of the research process. Establishing your research question goes hand in hand with reviewing the work of other researchers, because you don't simply want to be asking the same question that others have asked, or if you do so, then you want to take a particular path in answering it that may show new insights as a part of an answer to a large research question. So in order to get to that frontier of known knowledge, of well-understood knowledge, of the scientific frontier, you perform a literature review, search and review. It's an iterative process in which you dig through the established literature, read what's there, related to each other, related to your own research question, refine your own research question possibly, and thereby pre-structure your own work. You learn the scientific language around your research question, etc. You're simply trying to figure out what was done before you so that you can better argue that what you will be doing is new and novel and worth knowing and hence worth publishing. How to do it? Well, you probably get some leads from a supervisor or from your peers. You need to define your search terms. Today, pretty much all search is now electronic. Your search terms, your key terms, and your search words, and you will actually refine them over time. You start out with a few, and as you learn the language of the domain, you will refine them and change them until you know precisely what to look for. It's actually a common experience that you start out searching using some of the search engines we will be talking about in a few minutes and find nothing and think perhaps, oh no, there isn't anything, which is good because I'm the first. And then over time you realize you just didn't use the right words because you did not speak the language of the research domain, and hence the work that others have done was not accessible to you. because you simply used the wrong terms to look for it. So, but let's assume that in this iterative process, you're just starting out with a couple of search terms, whatever, pair programming, productivity of pair programming, etc. And one thing to look out for or to start with is a survey article. Indeed, for important research questions, people will write survey articles, which where survey doesn't mean questionnaire, but where it means surveying the domain. So someone sat down and actually read all the literature on the subject matter, classified it, perhaps developed some new theories or frameworks from it, using the published work as input. And that could give you a great overview to get started. So actually life is quite convenient if you can rely or use such established survey papers. More often than not, however, there aren't any, or they are old, or they probably don't really speak to your particular question. And hence, you should start looking at the main journals in the area, the main journals and conference proceedings. So you just dig into the library, scan the table of contents of those journals, and pick out articles that seem to be on target. As you do that, as you read the abstracts, you'll quickly see how your search terms may not have been quite right, and you refine them. As you actually find articles that might be directly related to your research question, you will not only read the abstract, but you will really have to read the paper. Again, helping you refine your understanding of the language, of the domain, pertinent questions, real problems, partial answers given, etc. Once you do have got a hold of some relevant papers, you go back and forth in time around those papers. Literally, you can imagine scientific output, research papers, being nodes in a graph. Each paper is a node and it cites other papers. There's what we will get to know in a few slides as the bibliography or literature list associated with a paper. And this contains all the other papers that this particular paper references. So it's the research work that others have done that the author of the paper at hand considers important and references. And so it's the work that came before. It is that paper's related work, for example. And so you should be looking at the papers that came before the paper you're looking at and read up on that and track that down. And you should also use databases to see what later work is referencing the article you're looking at. That's why each paper is a node in a graph. It has incoming and outgoing edges to other papers, those that came before and that came after. And all of these edges are clues or hints or indicators of other work you need to be digging into. Digging into doesn't mean read in great detail. It means look at least at title and abstract to determine whether it's worth spending more time on actually reading that paper. As you try to track down related work, you should focus on concepts first. What's your research question is about and the pertinent concepts relating to that. And only on a second level or a secondary way should you perhaps be following a few or certain authors who might be prolific in that publication domain. But both concepts and authors are valid ways, threads through the literature. Where you find those papers is of course on the web, but still also in physical libraries. So we now have physical and electronic libraries, and we have search engines in those libraries and independently of those libraries that try to index all the known research work. So let's take a look at those in more detail. FAU, the Friedrich Alexander University, of course, has a university library like any large or any university worth its salt. And you can physically go to our library. It's got multiple locations and talk to the friendly librarians who will be happy to help you. Or you can go to its website and search through its website at ub.fau.de. Please note that some of the access may be limited to you being on the campus network. If you're trying to use it from home, you cannot be identified easily as a member of this university, so you may have to tunnel into the university network in order to make use of the library and download research papers as PDFs based on the subscriptions that our university has with the publishers. Next to a large university library like ours, there are specialized digital libraries typically provided by publishers. For computer science, for example, there's the Acm Digital Library, which provides the publications of the ACM, the Association for Computing Machinery, and it's available at acm.org/dl. And if you're on the campus network again, you will get instant access to all the research papers in there. Also then, finally, you do have pure search engines like Google Scholar or the late CiteSeer. Microsoft has a search engine for research work. It only indexes known research work, but then it tries to be comprehensive, read all of the research work, but it may not be able to give you a PDF for it. Here you see the website of the university library. It provides structured search, it provides all kinds of auxiliary services. Please talk to our librarians to get help with it. The Acm Digital Library, of course, is provided by the ACM. Because it's a computer science library, it has particular functionality relevant for computer scientists. Certainly it offers up its own publications with high quality detail, structured information about authors and metrics on those through its own website. Google Scholar lets you search easily, but again, you may or may not be able to receive the paper directly because it's really just a search and indexing and then search engine for the paper. Many times though, if the papers are freely accessible, you'll find a link to the right of the entry, the bibliographic information. Google Scholar also provides information on authors, so you can track down publications by way of authors, as well as some real, as well as vanity metrics like citations here, which of course is very important, though Google Scholar probably oversights, finds too many, where others actually find too little, too few. Organizing all these materials, you will quickly acquire a large number of PDFs. You can organize them simply on your hard disk in folders. I actually still do that a fair bit, and this way you grow your own library. Or you use web tools which try to make that easy. Obviously, there's much more functionality that can be provided beyond the file system if you use a tool like Mendeley or some of the others like ResearchGate and academia.edu, which are much better actually than Mendeley. Now, to have a small detour here, or the proverbial soapbox I want to climb on, publishing is actually a business, and you get a very good deal by being a member of this university because you get access to all those papers, which otherwise would cost you a lot of money if you downloaded them by paying at those publishers' sites. How much, you wonder? Well, take a look at these numbers that our university library provided to the public and to professors in particular, asking for help to fight a particularly bad predatory publisher called Elsevier, a Dutch company. In 2011, access to the Journal of Chromatography, I think 4 issues a year, cost 20,000 euros. So one copy of that journal, 4 in a year, is 5,000 euros. 5,000 euros. So it's egregious. It's really beyond and it's because it's a monopolist. The reputation of a publication is tied to that journal, which then is owned in terms of trademark, title, etc. by a particular publisher, who then wants to be paid handsomely by libraries and others who want to access its content. The annoying thing about it is that the actual content of these journals is the research work performed by researchers using public funds, your taxes. And then other researchers performed the reviewing and approving of the research work using their work time, typically paid for also by your taxes. And the only thing that the publishers do is to occupy that monopoly position where they own the journal, the trademark, and they probably do a little bit around the publishing and obviously also the provision of PDFs through the web, but presumably nothing that warrants a cost of 20,000 euro a year for access to that particular journal. This was 2011. Here's the same data for 2013. The Journal of Chromatography is now in second place. It was 20,000 in 2011. Now it's almost 24,000 in 2013. So that is quite the nice price hike here. And it's not even the most expensive one any longer. There's a more expensive one by Elsevier, the International Journal of Biochemistry. And this one is also is more than 24,000 euro per year. Our head librarian was so exasperated, she sent out an email asking professors to help and oppose the practices of Elsevier. So here's my help, and it's actually not a moral plea, but just a rational economic argument. Given those prices, if you publish with Elsevier, you're actually not publishing, you're burying your paper. Nobody will read it. It's so expensive, almost nobody except for the most well-endowed Western libraries at strong Western universities will pay these outrageous fees. So over time, when compared with free access, your paper published with Elsevier will remain buried and will be less and less cited. You may argue that it should be cited because it's considered valid knowledge if it was published there, but then again, let me remind you, it's not been published there, it's been buried there. So I do not recommend submitting a paper for publication with a company like Elsevier, simply because it will turn not into a publication, but into a burial of your paper. From an academic perspective, being able as the author of a paper to say it has been published is still valuable. You will just not get any of you citations. And so you better choose places where your publication will be cheap or openly accessible. Don't fall for the open access trap here. In order to publish at Elsevier, they're currently trying to turn the tables around and charge authors to publish works in their library using the open access model. Let me stop here. There's much more to say about the business of publishing. This is not our main concern here. But again, think very hard before you go and submit something to a predatory publisher like Elsevier. Other related work could be the Bible. That's at least what this particular student here thought. I'm unhappy or happy, whatever, to say that citing the Bible does not count as scientific sources being utilized. You can do that, but then you need to provide the appropriate context and do not try to sell the Bible to any reader as scientific work. Now then, you have followed the proper process, you have found all the research papers you wanted, you've read them, and you've sorted them into your prior art and related work parts. And so now you talk about them in your paper, either as prior art embedded throughout the text or in the related work section, comparing and contrasting your work with what others have done to make the point that your work is novel. How to do it? Well, you need to properly cite it. In line with your regular text, you do not provide the actual paper reference, but only an index into the bibliography or literature list, which typically comes at the end of the paper. So referencing something has two parts, a reference or an index into a bibliography list at the end of the paper, where the index identifies a particular entry, where the actual information is for a reader how to find that particular referenced piece of work. The particulars of formatting this content are being described by various style guides, for example, the APA style, the American Psychological Association style. There are many styles, and next to the APA style, for example, in computer science, the Acm style is popular as well. The way it looks, you can see here. Within the text in line, you may provide that index supporting some statement you're making, and that index typically in round or angular brackets, square brackets, and it may be in the middle of the sentence or just at the end. The way that index is formatted could just be a number, or sometimes it's just the first three letters of the first author, followed by some number, typically a shorthand for the year. Or you may even provide the full first author's last name with the full year. All of these are valid styles. Any publisher will give you their particular model or will point you to a particular style they want you to use in your publication. The referenced work then will all be collated at the end of the paper in particular order, either in the order in which it was referenced in the text. That's if you have a numbered indexing system where the index is just the number 1 to whatever. Or it's provided alphabetically if you use as the index the author name, so as part of the index, the author names. Here you see a couple of examples. 27 as a pure number as the index, SPE 87, 89 as a combination of name and year, and a final entry without an index number because the key information, the author, is the index, and that's how this particular bibliographic entry is referenced from the main text. Here you see the beginning of a bibliography using APA style, American Psychological Association style, just a long list. It goes on. You can see we only make it from A to B. Obviously, there's more to come until Z. And sometimes there are other types of references. Ideally, of course, you only cite as related work, properly academically published references, but sometimes you have to reference other materials like websites or personal communication, and a good style guide on how to reference will also tell you how to do that. And so here you see a couple of examples. Websites, of course, due to their transience, are more tricky to reference. Publishers, done right, archive for a long time, so the work will remain accessible and stably referenceable. Websites obviously aren't, though there are now tools by which you can get a stable version of a website too. All right, so that's it from me. What did we learn? Well, we reviewed literature search and review, how to do it, best practices of it, the tools you use, and then how in a paper you reference that work and how to provide a bibliography. Details to follow in the final section of this course on how to write a paper. Thank you very much, and I will see you in a bit for the next segment. Until then.